I don't know how many emails went out, probably a few tens of thousands, but I love you and we're here for a positive reason. So I hope you don't get out angry at me for it. Give it a couple of minutes here for people to pile in. Please like, share, and subscribe. And oh, I forgot, we're going to do this experiment again where there is a Twitter space. So what we're going to do, so we're going to do the live stream. And then after the live stream, we're going to, uh, oops,
Do the live stream.
that's the wrong one. We're after the live stream, we're going to do a Twitter space. So the Twitter space is going to start now. And for those of you who want to listen as opposed to watch, and everybody else, you can join in the Twitter space when we're done, and we can just do a little bit of back and forth and just follow up on some of the things that we're talking about here. And I see people are slowly starting to dribble in. And to all of you, somebody's already on Twitter. Perfect. I think we're getting, are we live on Substack? We are. So uh, I'm surprised the phone's working. I had this great idea. My life is quite busy right now. So finding an extra hour of time is really a struggle. So last weekend, I decided I don't have time to go to, the dealership and get my car fixed and all that sort of stuff. So I figured, you know what? Let me make a 2-hour window or so, and I need to put brakes on my car. So you know what? I'll throw brakes on it. I'll jack it up. I'll throw some pads on it. It's all it needed, and swap my snow tires, which is that was the big thing I had to do because it's starting to snow that time of year. And so I went, and you always have to have the right tools, right? And I did, except I was struggling to get the new pads and the caliper after it's compressed, and I couldn't see. So what I do, I had this amazing idea. I figured I'll take my iPhone and I'll use the light on the iPhone, the torch or flash, whatever you want to call it, and I sit it right on, for those of you who know cars, you'll know this, on the spring seat on the strut. So that's where the spring goes into the strut. And I had a perfect view and was able to solve the problem. And everything was going perfectly until I dropped the car onto my iPhone. And so I don't know how much weight was on the iPhone as the spring and the full weight of the car was on it, maybe 500 pounds. But kudos to you, Apple. Only a slight little crack, and Face ID no longer works, but Face ID is the devil's work as far as I'm concerned. So, uh, good morning, everybody. Please like, share, and subscribe. Welcome to the Freedom Coffee live stream. And by the way, you know what wasn't under my car? There's something that wasn't there. It was this amazing holiday gift. Honking for Freedom, which is arguably really the only accurate telling of the Freedom Convoy. And we are getting into the holiday season, whether it's Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. Good morning, Beth. You want to give somebody a meaningful gift this year? I promise you, it'll make them cry. And it's also kind of designed it was written for people who might not have completely understood it. And I know in a few cases, some people, by giving this gift to some people, was able to reach people on the other side and make them understand exactly why we had that protest and why COVID was the spectacle that we all know it was. So honkingforfreedom.com, and audiobook is being worked on and just a few chapters left, and hopefully I'll be able to get it out soon to all of you. So good morning. Welcome to the Freedom Coffee live stream. And this is the place where we come together and we have our Freedom Coffee. We celebrate all the freedoms that we have. And we're going to work together on strategies on how to communicate and how to reach people and thus expand our freedoms in the future. So if you have your copy, coffee, now is the time. I just dribbled a little bit. Anyways, let's start with a couple of things. By the way, I mentioned this the last live stream. I released an article on my Substack, a National Telegraph, and I kind of put it to network. We'll see, who else covers it. My article on Diana Salazar and Ecuador labeling Hamas, Hezbollah, and the IRGC as terrorist groups, and why that is relevant to all of us in the West. And, it's unfortunate that so many people don't travel to South America and understand the geopolitical implications. But right now, South America has never been more relevant to the United States, Canada, and the Western world. And people, I think people just don't realize it so much. But that's just my perspective. So let's start with a couple of good things. Non-political stuff, because I think what we're always talking about is politics. So let's just start with some positive framing around the world. It's something we don't do enough of, because it's very easy to get trapped into negative thinking and all the chaos of the world, which I think is, I would say, grossly exaggerated, but exaggerated to a point, or at least the implications on our lives right now. It will get more severe if we don't fight it, but I think we're starting to fight it anyways. The JWST, this is hysterical. For those of you who are into cosmology and astronomy, the JWST, which is the James Webb Space Telescope, I was watching this documentary on it, and it's pretty wild. It seems to be everything we knew was wrong, and the great Edwin Hubble. Yeah, he might have been wrong with his whole redshift theory, which, oops, I guess everything we know of the past 150 years about the universe expanding, that might not be the case, which was always kind of my thought. I never really bought into the whole Big Bang. Once I heard inflation is like when they rig the climate change stuff. They just, it's a fudge factor. They just make something up. And I mean, kudos to Lawrence Krauss, a smart guy, but I think inflation theory was just a little bit of a band-aid. So if you want something to watch online to get away from all the political nonsense, I suggest, just plug in James Webb Space Telescope, and you'd be amazed at some of the interesting things you'll find that are not politics, and that you can get away from it, which I think is important. I try to do that every night, many hours before bed. Something we discussed earlier on this topic is the Three Eye Atlas videos, the hoax videos on YouTube that are basically the modern equivalent of War of the Worlds. I don't know if you've noticed, it's gotten a little out of control. It's gotten so wild. Now it's a spaceship. Now it's morphing and it's drawing energy from the sun. And I think to myself, that's amazing, because right now we can't even see it because it's blocked by the sun. So that seems to be one of these. I don't know if it's a demoralization strategy, but they're all AI videos. They're on channels that likely are being pushed to the West from people who may not be so friendly towards the West. I'm not sure. Just to, ideologically subvert people in the West. They're entertaining. I mean, they're great. They're fun videos to watch and to fall asleep to, but they're just entertainment. They're like those Ancient Aliens hoax movies on or series on the History Channel. I mean, it's entertaining, but none of that's real. It's not real. None of it. So if you watch it, you should. It's something other than politics, but it's nothing but entertainment. For those who might have saw, there was this this video I put up as kind of a preview, and I'll just say it. I have made my first music video, and you might think, well, what do I care? And you shouldn't. Or maybe there's something here that you don't see, and that's kind of my perspective on this. This has been part of my ongoing deep dive into AI for quite some time. And I encourage all of you, if you're not utilizing AI tools, start learning them. Like, invest the time. It's something that I've noticed in, the political and advocacy space over many years, when I would suggest different strategies online, communication strategies. I would, everybody always argues with you. And then when you win the argument, what do they say? Oh, well, I'm just not good with computers. Okay, well, we got to get away from that. I'm not good with computers because unfortunately, the people who are adversarial towards the West, they are good with computers, increasingly so. I remember seeing a few years ago, this was just before COVID, if I'm not remember, like just before one of the Muslim Brotherhood, they call it a school, but it's really a radicalization institute. They had on their chyron on the street in on their digital chyron, it said this weekend, bring your children, learn to code. Why do you think they were learning to code, right? And we've seen the results of that on Twitter over the past week or so. The results of the people who have learned to code and learned technology very, very well and have been using it against Western interests. So you don't have to learn to code, but I would suggest learning AI. Now, what am I on about? Like all things new, you're going to find things of personal interest to you. And in this particular case, it took me a little while. The thing is with AI, it doesn't necessarily make things quicker. It just makes the quality of your work better, I think. And I was able to write lyrics. I was able to write music. I was able to write many, many, many different prompts for different video generation and then make modifications and also this was quite a long endeavor to put all of this together. It's not quick and easy. And in the case for those of you who are into music, if you understand time signatures, what key you want your song to be, what the structure is, a type of music. If you, that's a little tip with if you're going to use Sonu. Uh, Push the AI to use sus chords, sevenths chords, and identify them as passing chords. And you really can end up with almost exactly with what you were looking for. So the point of all of this is when you delve into all the AI tools that are out there, you're going to find lots of tools, obviously, for productivity, but you're also going to find tools of personal interest that you never would have imagined. And I think a lot of us need to get away from politics a little bit, maybe, a little less politics every day. And maybe this is a good way of doing it while also learning a set of skills and technology that will help you and help all of us in this, global geopolitical war that we are in, right? This messaging war. What's up, Tao? It's good to see you, brother. Just saying hi to people who are in one of the private chats, and hello to everybody on Substack. By the way, Substack, this is the second time I promised you better sound quality, and I'm hoping I hope you get that's what the little schmitchik is here on my shirt. All right, we'll get into a little bit of politics and some of the fun stuff that's going on. This is so good. Okay, so I don't know, with those of you who watched my previous stream, I mentioned something, my thesis, and I want to know what you think. My idea was, oh, hold on. That phone that the car, oh, here we go. All right, Twitter's back up. My thesis was in the case of Canada. We'll first start with Canada. We'll branch out from there. I think Mark Carney hates his job. I think that's very evident. You can tell by his body language. You can tell by the lack of enthusiasm, his demeanor, the way he speaks. He looks almost like, I don't know, he looks like a demoralized Walmart manager, is how I would describe Mark Carney at this point. And as I mentioned last time, whenever you see him on camera, even though he's not, he subconsciously to us looks like he's 3 feet tall. And I think just because he's been so massively dominated by the Trump administration's geopolitical strategy, which we'll talk about in a minute, that he realizes he was king of the castle in his company, and I guess at the Bank of Canada and the Bank of the English equivalent of the Bank of Canada, what's called the Bank of England. But that power is kind of an aphrodisiac, and when you step into a role thinking you're going to have all the power that you want, and then all of a sudden, oh wait, I have a boss now, and Mark Carney's boss seems to be Donald Trump, who's done a great job at whether you like it or not. I'm not saying you should like it, but leveraging himself into being the dominant political leader for Canada. That's essentially what's happened. And Mark Carney is completely powerless, which is something I've been saying for I don't know, a long time. And maybe it's just because I've lived all over the world that, as I explained on Mark Petroni's radio show last week or the week before, that the U.S. controls 76% of Canada's economy. Whether we like it or not, that's just the reality. So they are just in control. And we've had a good relationship. Yeah, sometimes they'll take advantage of things. They would argue we've taken advantage of the position through free trade or not. I'm not making the case either or. I'm just saying there's two different, somewhat reasonable arguments on either side. But the reality is they are the ones who control the market because they're the greatest economy the world has ever seen. So why fight with them? I don't understand this. Why would you fight with them? You know, anyways. But I think that's led to and for those who, there's going to be a bunch of people who hate Carney right now. Are going to be screaming about the corruption and the money laundering and the different deals back and forth. Like, yeah, that's politics, and then that's third world politics in the middle world, in the modern world. And Canada has behaved very much like a third world nation politically over the last little while. So there's no surprise at that. But the idea is that essentially we operate at the whim of the United States, whether we like it or not. Economically, I'm speaking. So I think it's in our best interest to work with them. But Canada itself has grown. Our government's grown increasingly, not just incompetent but pathetic. Because what is it? It's like you take Argentina with all its natural resources, you make it a lot bigger, a lot colder, and you just flood it with Islamist, communist, narco Islamists, and Calistanis. Well, that's Canada now. That's what it's become. And so everybody's walking around saying, wait, something looks off here. Even liberal-minded people are looking around and saying, wait, something's not quite right. I've had so many people who I know who are maybe the centrist liberal position, the people we need to persuade, actually, that have been opening up and saying, what's going on here? And when you explain, 5 years ago, they would just call you a name and keep walking. Whereas now they're curious because they can see something is wrong. And unless we fix it, unless we do something internally in Canada to fix this, narco-terrorist Islamist takeover of the country, if we don't fix it, it's only a matter of time until Canada becomes partially swallowed by America. Um, we're becoming. I don't know what that looks like. Is it just dollarization, an economic zone? Trump does his troll of the 51st state, but that direction, that trajectory right now, that is inevitable if we don't start taking our national security seriously. Because, as I explained in a couple of presentations in Florida on this issue, that Canada is increasingly becoming an external threat to the United States national security interests, and especially if Trump is, and we see all the signs of this, that Trump is adopting uh, a revitalization of the Monroe Doctrine. I guess we can start calling it the Trump Doctrine. Um, as they secure different parts of the Western Hemisphere, and we'll talk about it in a second, then is it not only inevitable that if Canada and Mexico, they've already listed the narcos as terrorist organizations, and it's pure chaos. They're threatening politicians. Politicians are in hiding. There's basically small-time guerrilla warfare going on the ground in Mexico right now. So that is going to sort itself out, I think. And what's left? Well, what's left? There's two countries left. One of them, we'll talk about the other in a minute, is Canada. And if Canada's not going to do anything to help secure the Western Hemisphere and just thinks it can be an ongoing communist threat to the United States, well, the world's largest economy, or history's largest economy and military, are probably going to teach us something different. And remember, Canada is the country, my American friends make fun of this, the ones who know. Canada is the country who, we were going to expand our military. We bought a submarine from the Brits, of course, not nuclear. And we bought a submarine for, what was it, 220 billion? No, $220 million or something like that. A used sub, and it had a hole in it. I mean, this is what happens. You defund your military, you weaken your country, and you bring in essentially a foreign military in the form of the Muslim Brotherhood and terrorists and Khalistanis. Like, okay, well, what do you expect is going to happen? I mean, this is not rocket science. You don't have to be a geopolitical expert to understand this is what's going on. But what I'm encouraged about is that there are more liberal-minded people. In Canada, we call them blue liberals. So they're economically conservative, but they vote for the Liberal Party, which I don't get at this point how you can even do that. Even they are starting to get very, very concerned, to the point that one of them said to me, "I'm done. I'm done with this, and we need to change our trajectory." Their perspective is, we want to be accommodating to the whole world. We want to be an open society, but we want to be an open and tolerant culture. But they finally realize that's being exploited. A decade late, in my opinion, but at least they're starting to realize. And in that vein, it's very interesting to see what's happening. I mean, God bless what's going on down south. That now that ICE has entered Dearborn, Michigan, to remove the colonizers. Um, that's going to be a very difficult process, because so many of these colonizers have managed to co-opt the primary structure and get themselves into office, which is what they always do. But at least there is now appetite to fight this, and to understand that you cannot have an alien culture with alien values take over your entire structure and try to colonize it from within. But the Islamists have been taking over the entire local government. And I think it was, I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure it was Hassan al-Banna, the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, his quote about politics in the West, because he was alive in the 20s. I think he was executed in the 40s by the Egyptian government. But anyways, I think he said it, that the strategy is one election, one time. Now, that is right now impractical in the United States, but isn't that what Hamas did in Gaza? For those who don't know, who follow me or are confused about Gaza, that whole region was stupidly surrendered to the other side, and they elect the Arabs, and then they elected Hamas. Often, some people say under duress, and I get that, but the result was they were elected, and they were almost 18 years into a 4-year term when they invaded Israel. One election, one time. That's the strategy. And that's what you're seeing in Dearborn. You can see the seeds of that being sowed right now, and that being planted, and that's what they're aiming for. So, and that brings me on to the other area of the region with regards to this Trump doctrine / Monroe doctrine. And I posted something on this earlier today. Let me see if I can find it. I'm scrambling to get my notes done before I do this stuff, so I apologize. But essentially, my comment was I posted this video I generated of Trump in Havana looking like a real estate developer. That prime real estate. We can put a casino here, put a hotel there, whatever. And the idea is I think Scott coined this phrase, the dog not barking. The thing that should be said and nobody is saying. Um, and my question is, what's the dog not barking from my perspective is the Trump administration's been very quiet on Cuba. Why? Why? Is there more to come? Because we have a massive, what is it, one third of the American naval fleet is in the region right now. We know they're trying to get rid of Maduro, which is only a matter of time. Uh, that might be a little bit overkill just to get rid of Maduro and get Machado into government. For those of you who don't know, Maria Corina Machado, she is the person that is likely to be taking over Venezuela. Obviously, capitalismo. She's capitalist. She is pro freedom. Um, all the sort of Western values that used to be common throughout Latin America until Che Guevara came along. So she's very much on the side of the United States. So they have this massive naval fleet to get rid of the bus driver because Maduro was a bus driver before politics. Yes. Hugo Chavez knew how to choose them. They call him El Mamon, the monkey. El Mono, sorry, El Mone. That Chavez was the monkey because, well, he behaved like a monkey and looked like one. Um, but you're going to see, I think, it's only a matter of time. Trump has made overtures. He said, "Yeah, we're talking to them. I'll talk to anybody." Because Maduro knows, like, that's it. He keeps shooting the boats. The Trump administration, they keep shooting the narco boats because that's their source of revenue. I hate to tell Ron Paul, like that is this whole narco terrorism infrastructure in Latin America. And if you live there or spend some time there, I don't mean on a resort, but with people who are live there and go to work every day, and go to university campus and find friendships there, and then you understand that that's exactly how regimes like this are in power. So once you cut off the money flow, meaning you start sinking their boats, then they're going to be desperate, and you're going to see so much infighting. And also remember, a lot of people don't know this. I don't think, but the the narco groups that are in South America, they are not Colombian. Yeah, Colombia doesn't have narcos anymore. They're all gone. They're all Mexican. All the Mexican cartels are operating throughout South America, Venezuela, Brazil, uh, Paraguay. We saw there was major changes in Ecuador, which was my article about Diana Salazar. She was the one she's not a Trump-like figure, but she's very, very strong. And I guess the left doesn't calls her a white supremacist, even though she's black. But she's a true heroine. Like she really has helped turn the tide as much as Milei and Bukele, although there's a bunch of asterisks around Bukele because there's some reasons for concern. But he at least put people in jail, which was not his idea. That was my friend's idea, who is no longer with us. So you see, you have this massive naval fleet in the region to take out one guy, the bus driver, who most of the country wants to get rid of anyways. And Maduro did this propaganda video of the military that he's building. And it was people my parents' age. Like God bless them, but they should be, living in a retirement facility in Florida, but they're picking up guns. Like, who are you kidding? And that is the state of Venezuela. And Venezuela has largely been controlled by Cuba, aka China. So money flows through Cuba into Venezuela, and that's how this has all been. They have been kept in power for so long. But China's another story because China is kind of imploding from the inside as well. We'll talk more about that another time. So you get rid of Maduro, um, then what? Well, what else do you have to secure in the region? So you have the Tri area in South America, where many of the cartels are still operating, but they're seeing a lot of resistance right now, not just because American support, but American support for those governments there, much like in Ecuador. Colombia's present. It's it's stupido. Petro is out of power, anyways, in May, and he's going to be replaced with a kind of right of center. I can't remember her name, but this politician, she's taking the place of Uribe, who was assassinated by ELN, which is a communist guerrilla faction that was supportive of Petro. So they're going to be out of office, and the guerrillas, guerrilleros, they'll have to go back into the jungle, and that war will continue, I guess. I'm not sure. But Petro will be out of office. Colombia will be secure. Ecuador's secure now by Danielle. And so all you have left is Lula in Brazil, which is basically overrun by Hezbollah, but I think that's part of the strategy. And what do you have left? You have Cuba. Well, nobody's talking about Cuba. Why? Well, if you're going to have this Monroe Doctrine and you're going to secure the Western Hemisphere, and you have allies all over South America that are doing very good work in securing the region, what's left? Cuba and Canada. Those are the last two countries. And I'm sure lots of you have flown over Cuba and seen how tiny Cuba is. If they're able to take out Maduro and put in a pro-American government, well, not put in, I mean, they're already elected, allow them to assume office. Well, don't you think they're going to be pushing back against Cuba as well? So I don't know. This is just, I could be wrong. Who knows? But I'm usually pretty good at calling where things are going, at least directionally. And so the reason I bring all of this up is because we're all, especially those of us who are on Twitter, we see all the chaos and all the emotional buttons that are being pushed by the Duganites. That Tucker Carlson is an example of a Duganite. And we're giving this perception that the world is falling apart, the world's burning to the ground, all that sort of stuff. And I got to tell you, I don't know. Maybe because I'm more familiar with the southern region of the Western Hemisphere, it's never been so good, honestly. I've never been so bullish and optimistic over the future of the Western Hemisphere. Europe, I think, is pretty much gone, unfortunately, and they're going to have some violence there. But I think in the Western Hemisphere, the Trump administration, like them or not, they're doing a very good job at securing the Western Hemisphere. So I don't know. Check out my article in on my Substack on Deanna Salazar. I think that will some people have mentioned to me it actually fills in a lot of the gaps, which is what I was trying to do for people, for them to understand it. And also, I have an article in Zero Hedge about the title is "A Caliphate Forming on America's Northern Border. How will Trump respond?" Well, I think we're seeing how he's responding, and don't forget he plays the long game. It's always amazes me when all these people on kind of the left side, well, let's call them radical left. I don't mean like centrist, reasonable people. The people who are the maniacs trapped in the echo chamber on the far left. Trump is stupid. Trump is this. All these. They don't understand that maybe they've never worked with or met any business developers. Like, what do you have to do as a business developer, especially in New York? Well, you have to be able to deal with mafia and communists. So I guess it would be the local unions and city council. You have to be able to know who to bribe, who to pay off. And you also have to be a long-term thinker who also knows how to navigate the bureaucracy and what forms need to be filled out and how to secure a loan and what lawyers you need. And you have to think long-term. I have a friend who's in the commercial lending industry, has been his whole career. Maybe that's why I've seen it from his eyes, that, they're putting together loans for a project that's going to be built in Sometimes, depending on, local regulations, 5, 10 years down the road. So whether they like it or not, they don't see it. Trump is a long-term thinker. That's why he'll plant a seed and he'll come back to something 2 or 3 years later. Oh, 2, 3 years later, maybe that might be an exaggeration, but you know what I mean? In terms of his messaging, he'll just plant the seed and he'll come back to it at another time, and I think that's what you're seeing, and I think you've seen a lot of that around, the Middle East and all the messaging back and forth. People think, "Oh, well, is he flip-flopping? One minute he's pro-Israel, and the other minute he's pro-Qatar," or whatever. It's like, I don't think that's what it is. I think he's negotiating in public, and he's utilizing the media, his knowledge of the media to negotiate. I somebody asked me about Trump's communication strategy, who's really perplexed by it, and I said, and this person's my age demographic, and I said it's pretty simple. I think I might have mentioned this in a stream before. His communication, or should I say, marketing and communication strategy, it's pretty simple. You know what it is? His first entry into entertainment. World Wrestling Federation, or now WWE, WWF. Look at the way he brands his people. Look at the type of intentional hyperbole that he uses. Everything is like watching Hulk Hogan against, Macho Man Savage. Everybody's got a persona and a brandable personality. That's how he's constructed the entire thing. And it is what made WWF into a multi-billion dollar corporation, because Vince McMahon took his father's business, which was very small, and expanded it massively through proper and effective marketing and communication. And Trump is utilizing a similar strategy that is built on emotional engagement, which is, when it comes to Israel, I've been advocating for a long time, behind the scenes politically, that's what Israel needs to do, and they don't do effectively, in my opinion. Not that there's not people trying, I get that there is, but just the broader strategy doesn't seem to work, and there's a bunch of reasons for that. Um, on this topic of the Middle East and Israel, I've been going through, and I don't know if any of you remember them, but I've been going through the hoaxes, which is, for me, that is most important. The communication framing to people in the West, for them to understand that this is what they are seeing, whether it's online or in media. They're seeing a list of hoaxes. And so we'll go back a little bit. One of the hoaxes that we've heard, and you can tell there's a little bit of a list forming, and there's a reason for that. One of the things on the hoax, one of the hoaxes on the Palpatine or Palestine, I call it Palpatine because, free Palpatine. Um, one of them is, if you remember, the open air prison, right? That Gaza was an open air prison, but everybody wants to go back because it was paradise. Well, which one is it? Can't be both. Can't be both an open air prison and paradise you wanted to go back to. So that's the first hoax, is the open air prison hoax. That was completely a hoax. And it's important for people in the West to understand it. One of the other ones on the list is the genocide in Gaza hoax, right? It was, I don't know, whatever it is. 20 billion people were killed in Gaza, whatever whatever the number is today. They did the same thing. I can't remember what year it was, but remember, they tried to brand it. The CBC, who works with Qatar, has been working with Qatar for over a decade in Canada. They tried to brand it, it wasn't the chaos in Jenin, but it was something like the genocide in Jenin, or whatever it was. And their claim was, 1,500 people killed and 20 billion children killed, or whatever the numbers were, right? And unfortunately, it was discovered after, a couple of years later, that, well, in fact, there was, if I remember the numbers correctly, 59 people were killed. 36 of them were killed by a Palestinian rocket landing on themselves. and the remainder were enemy combatants who were engaged militarily, right? So that's what they always do. And the genocide hoax was basically an expansion of the same narrative at scale. And then we find out afterwards that it's actually 59,000 Hamas gangsters. I don't think fighters is the best way to describe them. Hamas gangsters, Hamas trash, Islamists, whatever, and 8,000 civilians that were sacrificed by Hamas. That's what actually happened. So it's a similar parallel, and people in the West don't seem to often understand this because our media has never communicated that this is, I call it the inflation strategy, like Lawrence Krauss's inflation theory of universe. They just take whatever their strategy is, and if they wanted to go global, they just take the numbers and they inflate them massively, but they're all fake. It's all fake news and fake data, right? So we have the open air prison hoax, the genocide in Gaza hoax. One of the other ones we hear frequently is it's stolen land hoax, and that's obviously that's refuted by for people who will listen, which is not most people. But the facts on the ground are, that we all know the UN passed a resolution for Israel and the legal entitlements that they have. It's actually the most legitimate country in the world because unlike other countries throughout history that were, they were established through conquering, the Israel did the diplomatic approach to the United Nations. So the "it's stolen land" hoax, and I haven't figured out a really good method of communicating yet. Partially because I haven't focused on it, because there is the tentpole hoax, and once the tentpole hoax is exposed, which we'll do over time, we're not going to talk about it today. Once the tentpole hoax is communicated to people in a way that they're willing to absorb it, then all the other hoaxes fall apart. And so that's kind of the primary one. And then one of the other ones today, I think that I'm adding to the list is the settler hoax. How can someone who always lived somewhere be a settler? Like, how does that happen? I'm not sure. If For those who don't know, Israel has always had people of the Jewish faith within the region, even during exile. And you tell people that, and they look at it, that's not possible. It's so funny that people have this framing of the world that we all live in America, that we all live in a structured state society where the bureaucracy has a local bureaucracy and it's able to communicate with everybody in every region. Like, what planet are you people living on? 2,000 years ago? That's not how the world was. Even 150 years ago, when the world was predominantly empires, like on one of my family's side, our family thought they were from Poland, but it turns out they were from Ukraine. Because it didn't matter back then, because you were just living within empires. There was not the tax structure that we live in today. The world was a lot more open than it is. It was not as structured as it is today. And in fact, South America is very much like that. I remember going to Panama one time and trying to ship something there, and learning they don't even have postal codes. Like, you're in the year 2020, when I was there, 2018, 2019, whenever I was there. I'm in Panama and they don't have postal codes. They technically, I guess, have them, but nobody's used. They've implemented them since, but nobody uses them. That's how most of South America is. Me and Masva, or Sin, who's comes into spaces, we were joking about that and talking about it one time, that in a country like Colombia, it's not the country of Colombia. You have a bunch of city-states that are kind of loosely connected by the federal government, but there's so much corruption. Who really controls what? We don't really know. That's why FARC, when they're in the Amazon for 40 years, that was just a whole region of the country that nobody goes to. That's how most of the world works. That's how you've always had Jews living within Israel throughout human history, even though you had the Assyrian Empire there. They didn't control every little spot of land. They controlled the cities. They controlled the main economic zones. Of course, people could live in rural regions and nobody would know that they were there, right? And that's just kind of the reality on the ground. But it's just amazing that I guess it's an extension of when people take our moral framing of the world and they apply it to people who lived 1,000 years ago. They're doing the same thing with government bureaucracy. That, oh, the bureaucracy that we have today, we've always have it. No, we haven't had it. We haven't had it, we've only had it for a very short time because a couple of world wars ago, the world was just empires all over the place. So it's just funny that how people see the past the same way that they see today. So, anyways, those are my comments on all of that stuff. And I know some of you, I've been getting so many messages from people. I appreciate it, asking me why I'm not streaming. Listen, life is busy. I'm in the middle of a lot of changes. I will get to it more frequently, and I'm trying my best. But I guess overall, I think it's important to zoom out. I do that a lot and take the 50,000-foot view of what's happening in the world today. And I think if you zoom out and you look at all the progress we've made in such a short period of time, Trump's not even been in office for a year now. It's not even been a year. And already we're seeing the solidification of the entire Western Hemisphere in less than a year. We're already on that trajectory. And if that doesn't give you cause to be more optimistic about the world and where we're going, I don't know what does. And by the way, it's not your fault. We're always fed negative framing around all the things that are going on in the world. But I don't see that as being reality. When you see, maybe one side's a little airy fairy, well, it used to be, and the other side is all, it's all chaos and disaster. The truth is somewhere in between the two. Yeah, of course, there are some struggles and bad things that go on in the world, and we get that. But the skill is not to focus just on all the really negative things. You got to be able to zoom out and look at all the good that's going on in the world. And a good way to do that is to look at technology without the fear mongering. The fear mongering around AI, the whole AGI is going to take over our whole. Yeah, if you use AI enough, then you realize, yeah, it's not really a threat. There's, what did I do to the AI that I realized? Oh yeah, I was trying to get AI to listen to music. It can't hear music. It just can't. And no matter how much I tried different apps and all that sort of stuff, it can't identify what it is. So it's so limited in its grasp of the world and what to do with it. And remember, it's just creating patterns of our language. That's all it is. There's not really intelligence there. And I don't think we're going to have it for quite some time. Maybe the trajectory of Halo is correct. Maybe in 2552, they'll finally be able to have establish an AI that understands human emotions, but it doesn't. And I was watching this thing recently and it's so funny that people can't put it together. So I argue in spaces a lot, that the reason we on these side of pro-Western, pro-Israel, pro-freedom side, that we're very ineffective at communicating that to the other side. And my argument is because people are driven by emotion. And this is not my idea. Haidt has talked about it in one of his books. It's a known fact about human beings. Scott Adams talks about it a lot. Anybody within that realm kind of understands this. That as much as you may not like it, we don't make rational decisions. We make emotional decisions, and then we post-rationalize. And some of us are just very good at post-rationalizing it and convincing ourselves that, oh, we made a decision based on data. Nobody's done that. And nobody does that. And until we understand that, we won't be able to communicate to the other side because we need to communicate to them emotionally. And I was watching this thing. It was a completely different topic, but they touched on this. It was an AI video, actually. And there was a guy, can't remember his name, sometime in maybe the 70s, he lived 60s, 70s, some American, if I'm not mistaken. And he had some damage to his brain. I don't know what it was. I guess it was an accident or something. So the emotional center of his brain no longer functioned. And what they found amazing about it is he couldn't make the simplest of decisions. He couldn't decide which shoes to wear, which clothes to wear, what time he should leave. Like his ability to make decisions was completely lost. That's because all of our decisions are based in emotion. And I talked to the pro-Israel people as well. I remember I was having a meeting many years ago, and I asked them, "Why are you pro-Israel?" I said, you keep wanting to sell the idea of, oh, it's the only democracy in the region, and the list of facts about Israel." And I said, but that's not why you support Israel. You support Israel because of identity. It's part of your identity. And identity is it's the most fundamental principle to our being, which is why the communists want to, confuse us so much that we don't understand the difference between a boy and a girl, because that's the most basic form of identity. It's a psychological process. And I said the reason you're supporting Israel because it's part of your identity. That's an emotional attachment. So you need to find an emotional attachment to reach people for them to understand the importance of of Western freedoms in that region are just as important as they are in this part of the world, because that's the front line against theocratic authoritarianism, which we talk about radical Islam. That's what that is. And so hopefully we're on that journey where we're starting to understand that we are emotionally driven creatures and we'll be able to communicate a little bit better and wake up some people who can be woken up and can see the world the way you want to. They just need to be communicated in a way that they'll be able to absorb it, right? At least that's how I view it. Okay, I see there's there's a whole bunch of Tao. Tao, I love you, brother. But you put these comments in the chat, and they're so long, and I got to get a bigger laptop, I guess. They're just small to see from here. Um, Somebody's trying to sell me cheap viewers. Yeah, thank you, China. No, thank you. Doesn't matter if Trump's flip flop is, but okay. All right. Well, we'll talk about this in the space, Tao. I know you're watching here. We have a Twitter space going on right now. I'm going to shut down the live stream because I'm going to export this as a podcast later. And then you can come up on stage in the Twitter space and tell me what you wanted to see there, but say there because I can't see it. But don't forget, if you want to make somebody cry, tears of joy, freedom, hunkingforfreedom.com. And you can get your copy now. And I will let you know when the audiobook is ready, hopefully soon. Oh, and I don't know if any of you are coming to Colombia in January. It'll be a lot of fun. It's a great event. It's a Bitcoin convention. I'll be one of the keynotes there. So if you've ever wanted to see South America, now is your time. And you can't beat the weather because it's 24 degrees every day of the year's there, right? So every day of the year. Okay, Tao, you're so okay. Whatever. We'll talk later, brother. Okay, I'm going to shut all of this down, and I promise you we'll be doing another stream sooner rather than later, and I'll join you in the Twitter space. And before I switch over, I'm going to add Jazz as speaker and co-host and let you start doing your magic, and then we'll get over there. And by the way, the topic in the Twitter space, whatever you want, like free for all, but like let's be nice to people and let's not make everything about the same issue we always talk about, and maybe see if we can bias things and focus on some of the positive developments in the world, because There's too much of, everything's negative, and it's making me crazy. And about the rest of you. All right, Substack. I will see you later. I love you guys. We'll talk to you soon.